a lot of people with your intellectual honesty that the U.S. was closer to nuclear war on Saturday, September 14, than at any time in our history, maybe since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Do you still believe that from the perspective of 10 days later?
100%. I'm convinced at some point in time, the history of what happened last week will be written, and it should scare the living you-know-what out of every American. And I've learned even more since then. I've had a very interesting and frightening conversation with Theodor Postol. He's the MIT scientist, a specialist in ballistic missiles and stuff. I've been familiar with him and working with him since the Gulf War, when he was the first non-military person to acknowledge what all military people knew, that our Patriot missiles weren't shooting down any Scuds. And he's been exposing the lies of the U.S. defense industry since then. But he educated me about some technological advancements in our nuclear weapons, fusing, et cetera, that had an impact on our employment, which causes us to be very forward-leaning in terms of preemptive nuclear conflict. And when you factor that into what was happening, it's even worse than what I was saying. Again, the American people need to wake the hell up. Excuse my language. We almost all died last week. I mean, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts on this. Had we gone forward and signed the document that Keir Starmer, not an American, by the way, a British prime minister, acting on the advice of British people, not Americans, who were acting on pressure given to them by Ukrainians, not Americans. There's no American interest here. Had he signed that, it would have set in motion events that, without any doubt, would have led to, through cause and effect escalation, a preemptive nuclear strike by the United States on Russia. Not Russia dropping nukes on NATO, a preemptive nuclear strike by the United States, because we can't win or manage conventional escalation using strategic assets. Russia has the advantage there. So the moment we start firing missiles into Russia and they start firing conventional missiles back into Europe, they will have such devastating effect on NATO that the only option the United States will have is to initiate its nuclear employment doctrine. Nuclear preemption, escalate to de-escalate, and then it's all over. 72 minutes, as I said before. It's worse than what I thought it was last week, because our nuclear employment plan, which no American knows about. I just want to remind people in the history of this, when John F. Kennedy was briefed on the first nuclear employment plan after he became president in 1961, he walked out of the Pentagon, he said, and we call ourselves the human race. This is disgusting. You're asking me to murder hundreds of millions of people. I can't do that. You have to give me other options. But the war machine doesn't have any other options. Lyndon Johnson almost got physically ill when he was briefed on it. So too Richard Nixon, who said, this is insanity. What are you talking about? You can't ask me to make a decision that causes hundreds of millions of people to die. Every president's been briefed on this war plan up until George W. Bush said this is crazy. Even Ronald Reagan, who was fighting the evil empire, couldn't do it. He said, I can't do it. That's why we need strategic defense initiative. That's why he went with nuclear disarmament. Only George W. Bush, when the Cold War ended and we suddenly weren't facing mutually assured destruction, said, hey, nuclear preemption could be in our benefit. And then Barack Obama, who said that's bad, he went along with it. Donald Trump doubled down by bringing in a new category of nuclear weapons, and Joe Biden has doubled down by changing our employment doctrine. American people, wake up. We're the bad people in the world here. We're the ones that have a policy of nuclear preemption and an employment plan designed to do that. So as we edge towards a crisis with Russia, stop thinking about the Russians nuking us. We start by nuking them. That's the way it works.
Here's Foreign Minister Lavrov on Saturday, cut number 10.
No one wants nuclear war. We said this time and again. Let me assure you that we have weapons which, if used, will cause grave consequences for the masters of the Ukrainian regime. These weapons are available and on full alert status.
What does that mean, Scott, on full alert status?
It means they're ready to fire right now. And they're not nuclear. That's the point I'm trying to make here. The weapons that Russia would use against Ukraine in a situation where they have made the decision to take the government of Ukraine out, to take Kiev, the government sector out, are non-nuclear in nature. They're strategic weapons. That's called the avant-garde. It's a hypersonic warhead that's loaded on to strategic missiles, old SS-19s, the Sarmat, the new heavy missile, the Yars mobile missile. They all have regiments that are equipped with conventionally armed avant-gardes. These will hit at 26 impact on the ground at 26 times the speed of sound. That's the equivalent of 26-ton bomb. All right, we've seen what happens when a 1.5 ton or a 3-ton bomb goes off. This will be a 26-ton bomb coming in hypersonic speed. It will take out entire blocks. And all Russia has to do is sprinkle Kiev with a half dozen of them, and the city ceases to exist. Remind you, they can also do that to Brussels, to NATO headquarters. They can do that to the British. They can do that to anybody. These aren't nuclear weapons. And when they do this, the impact will be so devastating, it'll have a nuclear-like impact on the psychology of the West. And there's the danger. And this is where I would, if I were advising Lavrov, say, I understand your capabilities and I understand what you can do, but you need to understand what that would trigger. And I do think he knows what it would trigger, which is why he keeps saying, we don't want to do this. We don't want this escalation.
Can those Russian hypersonics reach the east coast of the United States?
They can reach anywhere in the United States. They can reach the East Coast, the West Coast. They can hit anywhere. And what they hit goes away. And there's no defense against them. None. Again, American people, we've spent over $1 trillion building a ballistic missile defense system that doesn't work. It never will work. That's why we signed the 1972 Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, because back then we realized this was stupid. If you build a missile defense, they will build a missile to defeat your missile defense. And as you keep going, you will always be behind the power curve. The missile will always beat the missile defense. So why not just sign a treaty that says, let's not have missile defenses. Therefore, since we're defenseless, let's not go to war, mutually assured destruction. And since that's insanity, let's embark on arms control that reduces nuclear weapons, not increases them. And maybe we don't have to worry about any of this stuff. No, we're not doing that anymore. We have no more arms control. We're building missile defenses, and the Russians have built missiles that can defeat our missile defenses. And if we go to war, it's going to be very ugly, very quick.
Scott, what are you doing Saturday